If you like the content that we're pushing out, please like, share, and of course subscribe. And let us know in the comments what you think about our videos. Like, why would you watch it and not tell us what's going on? And I hope to see you later on. Peace out. Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to another alternative factuals video. Now, I know this video is a little out of schedule in comparison to what we usually do, like the whole Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday thing, but there is something that I had to absolutely get off my chest, and this is in regards to Cloak and Dagger. Now, what we already know is that there's a TV series coming out, and yes, obviously it involves a Caucasian teenage girl and a black guy, or black teenager, which is all cool, fine, and dandy, no problem. But, you know, it's 2018, everyone has an opinion, which is perfectly fine as well. Now, my whole thing is, a lot of people are thinking like the show is for the social justice warriors, the SJWs, you know, the abbreviated form or whatever, when in reality, a lot of people don't understand. And this is not just regular people, it's also people who have been reading comics for supposedly their whole lives. They don't really understand the fact that comic books have been a platform in which a lot of comic book writers and artists use to convey their political opinions and their ideas in terms of social statuses and all that stuff. Like, comics has been a way for a lot of people to express themselves in that way. So I kind of wanted to get into a little bit of Cloak and Dagger history and have a little, not a discussion, but kind of an overview in terms of their comics when they were initially introduced. Now, many of you may have not known that, you know, Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 64 in March 1982 is exactly when Cloak and Dagger was first introduced. Now, because it became popular enough and a lot of people were curious, in 1983 they had a 4-issue miniseries that actually did pretty well. And if I remember correctly, the 4-issue miniseries was actually written by Bill Mantlo. Now, Bill Mantlo has done a lot of things in Marvel in terms of his writing. He has always been kind of this really political kind of guy in terms of how a lot of his stuff is depicted. A lot of it can be open for interpretation, but he was a very talented writer in terms of what he's written over the course of Marvel's X-Men and the Avengers and the Thing with Mr. Fantastic and even Namor the Submariner and all that stuff. So a lot of his comics actually did have not just political, but also they had these kind of different point of views in terms of how people, especially people who are in the minority in comics like X-Men, who were physically meant to represent, you know, people of color and people who are oppressed, because that's the whole ideology behind X-Men. He even had some involvement when it came to Luke Cage, and I think that was Power Man Volume 2, yes it was. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Now, Cloak and Dagger are two teenagers. Now, initially they were runaways, but in the series it seems like they depict them as two teenagers who interact and then at some point probably will run away. Now, the thing about their powers is they are basically like yin and yang. Cloak, his cloak is actually a dimensional portal into this dimension that is of pure darkness, and this pure darkness is overtaking him physically. And what needs to be done is simply he needs to feed on the souls. Basically, he's kind of like Ghost Rider, feed on souls, or he has to be fed light, and light can be in the form of, you know, like fire or a light bulb or whatever the case may be. But the purer the light, the more satisfying it is to his hunger. So basically, Dagger is someone who is of pure light. She represents pure light. And in the 1983 Cloak and Dagger run, pure light was described as life force energy. That's how it's described throughout the comic books, and that everybody has this little bit of light, which is why Cloak has to feed on all of them. And Dagger has more than the average person, and then when he was not able to access anybody to eat in terms of transporting them to this dimension of pure darkness, she would give him some of her light in order to satiate his hunger, so that way he would not go on this rampage out of pure starvation. Now, as you even transition through the 4-issue miniseries, you actually do get an idea of what their purpose was, and a lot of it seemed to play this kind of aspect like Ghost Rider, where they were usually out for vengeance. And the reason why they were out for vengeance was because, one, they had no faith in the police force because they were not there when they needed them, because they were experimented on, which thus gave them these abilities, and they felt like this power was actually supposed to be used to, I guess, seek vengeance in terms of when people needed help in their community. And remember, this took place in Marvel Comics. This is, I think, New York City, if I remember correctly, that Cloak and Dagger are doing all of these things, consuming souls, killing people who deserve to be killed, like pimps and drug dealers. Not so much drug addicts, because drug addicts sometimes are lured into that life by drug dealers, but whatever. Now, what made the comic books very interesting is usually within the first couple pages, Bill Mantlo usually tends to make references to the Bible, actually. So in every issue, he always makes the same reference to Psalm 139 verse 14, which reads, "The darkness and light are both alike. I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Meaning, no matter, you know, well, there's an open interpretation for it, because I'm not trying to get too deep into religion, because that's going to open a whole new can of beans. But he makes a lot of references to these religious aspects in terms of there's always, you know, a dark side to the light, and there's always a light to the dark. But in reality, no matter what the case may be, you know, obviously we are beautifully and fearfully and wonderfully made and all that stuff. So there's a lot of, interpretations you can take on these comics, and they're meant to kind of make you think and understand, like, are they completely wrong for wanting to seek vengeance / justice in terms of how they're handling this in their communities, and even some of the things that they've dealt with. Like, I think eventually they might have gotten together later on in the comics. This might be like in the 1990s. Well, they came back to the whole idea of Cloak and Dagger, but I'm not exactly sure exactly when they decided to do that, because it's been on and off with their issues. But I do know for a fact that at some point this was supposed to represent like an interracial couple in the series. But regardless of the fact, their whole point, the whole premise of their characters as a whole is they're supposed to be opposites. They're supposed to be questionable in terms of the way that they did things. They're supposed to kind of raise your eyebrows and make you look at them differently, because one, it's a white girl, and two, it's a black guy who has a power of darkness, which, side note, I think is a little messed up a little bit, but I don't know necessarily if it was done intentionally, where the black guy has to have the darkness and a white girl has to have the light, whatever. But I'm not going to get too deep into that, because I don't know what Bill Mantlo was thinking, but that's more or less, that's his work. I'm not going to get too deep into it. But the whole point is it's supposed to raise your eyebrows and make you think, like, is there what they're doing? Like, this is what they're doing. Is it wrong? Is it wrong that they're seeking vengeance? Is it wrong that they're seeking justice for the community? And then even then, like, they're seeking refuge in a Catholic church, and telling these stories to the priest who is currently running the church, and he doesn't turn them in, because in the end of the day, like, they know that they're seeking vengeance for the right reasons, but even subconsciously they felt like they were wrong speaking to the priest. But regardless, Cloak and Dagger, the whole premise of their characters is they're supposed to kind of make you feel like, okay, what's going on here? They're supposed to touch on the things that happen in communities, how people are drug into the life of crime, and that life is not black and white. There are shades of gray. That is the whole premise of their characters. But like I said, this is my little side rant about Cloak and Dagger in the series that's coming up. So if you're new to the channel, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe, and leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think about the upcoming Cloak and Dagger TV show on Freeform, of all places. And I hope to see you in the next one. Peace out, Zaddy.